To understand the secure digital perimeter, it helps if we first understand the purpose of perimeter security. Perimeter security is about keeping the undesirable elements away from the things that we're trying to protect. That means keeping out our adversaries who may attempt to steal our assets or to sabotage our operations. It also means keeping out environmental threats that could cause damage or disrupt our operations as well. Perimeter security dates back to ancient villagers who initially built fortified walls to protect their settlement against marauding bandits and wild beasts. Until the late 20th century, security-conscious organisations relied on physical security almost entirely. There might be a perimeter fence, and that perimeter fence would have a gate, and at the gate there would be a security guard checking the credentials of people wishing to visit the organisation. That gate would be locked at night when it wasn't attended. Once somebody got through the gate, the next step would be coming to a reception area, and a receptionist would determine who was allowed to come through the door into the secure part of the office. Visitors would be quarantined in that reception area until a trusted member of staff escorted them into the employees-only area of the premises. Even within the employees-only area, there would be additional layers of security. So particularly sensitive assets, such as payroll records or trade secrets, would be stored inside locked cabinets or even inside secure safes. Again, those devices would be stored inside a locked room, and only a trusted few employees would have access and the keys to get into those specific secure rooms. Traditional physical security survived the initial proliferation of the PC. We worked on the notion that if you were trusted enough to get past that receptionist and allowed into the employees-only area, then we could trust that you wouldn't plug unauthorized devices into the physical network. Corporate internet connectivity created the first chink in the effectiveness of the physical perimeter. It really created the need for a digital perimeter. How do you allow a user to create a suitable temporary opening in this digital perimeter to allow them to access something on the internet, but without allowing in all of the other unwanted traffic from the internet? And this brought about the creation of the firewall. And you can actually think of the firewall as being a little bit like a mechanism that allows an employee to open the fire exit to let somebody in through the fire exit. And we can trust the employee to some extent that they are really only going to let in an authorized guest and not all of the seedy characters who are lingering in the back alley. So that's a way of thinking about what the fundamental purpose of a firewall is in terms of allowing internet traffic. On the flip side of this, we had the evolution of corporate websites and e-commerce. And this created a new challenge again, because just like a shop front, an e-commerce site or a corporate website really needs to be fully open to the public to be able to access at random. So we evolved the firewalls to deal with this as well. So firewalls would be configured to allow just the traffic that was destined for that website, so web traffic, and created what's called a demilitarized zone, or a DMZ, so a special section of the network that the web servers would reside in, and the firewall would allow just the traffic destined for those web servers to come into the DMZ. The DMZ and the web servers in the DMZ were also connected in many cases back to the corporate network, but this was through another set of firewalls, and those firewalls filtered traffic so that only traffic between the web servers in the DMZ and the back office servers would be allowed to pass through the firewall. They would block any traffic that had originated from the internet. The proliferation of Wi-Fi and the trend towards mobility really were the major eroding factors for physical perimeter security. Wi-Fi signals, for example, are notoriously difficult to contain, and they won't respect the physical perimeter of the organization unless you take special measures to shield them against radio spilling through. And in fact, many organizations would design their Wi-Fi networks so that they would spill out into, for example, the neighboring cafes, and that would be a convenient thing for employees to be able to go and sit in the cafe, still have Wi-Fi access, and be able to check their email. Now, this is really effectively the same as putting physical network ports outside your physical perimeter. And the adoption of Wi-Fi really drove the development of a lot of new technologies to control access to the network. And we have things like NAC, Network Access Control, came about really largely driven by that requirement. And it also drove much more widespread adoption of firewalls to limit the traffic that could pass between the user network and the server network. In around about the same time, we had mobility driving the need for remote access over the internet. So users would now start to have an internet connection at home and need to be able to connect into their office. And so we started deploying VPN gateways, remote access VPN gateways. They would normally be deployed in the DMZ, and these would provide the users a similar experience to it being in the office, but can now they be connected out over the internet and be able to work when they're traveling or when they're at home. The final legacy of mobility was really the removal of data from within the corporate security perimeter. Data was now stored on portable devices and ultimately was stored in the cloud, and this represents a valuable digital asset that's now sitting outside the reach of our physical security defenses. Consumerization of 3G internet connectivity really brought the next challenge, and it meant that employees could simply plug a 3G dongle into their laptop or ultimately into their desktop PC. And this is effectively a way of creating a backdoor, a secret backdoor to the organization that security doesn't know about and can't control and doesn't have any of the countermeasures like firewalls that would be in place for the corporate internet connections. So think of it as being able to plug a 4G dongle into a computer is just the same as creating a backdoor in the organization that security doesn't know about, and it's a backdoor that doesn't have a lock. The migration of applications and data to the public cloud and the shift towards SaaS-based delivery of applications have effectively rendered what was left of the physical perimeter completely incapable of protecting the digital assets which now reside totally outside its defenses. Meanwhile, the threat landscape in the digital environment has evolved to be more complex and more pervasive than any point in history. Cybercrime has evolved to a multi-billion-dollar industry, and we have nation-states waging cold wars over the internet, cyber warfare, and civilian businesses and consumers are frequently getting caught up in this as the inevitable collateral damage from new forms of weaponized malware. Even in this digital world, the mission of security remains the same: to protect our assets and to ensure business continuity. We therefore need a new, secure digital perimeter that can deliver these outcomes despite the fact that so many of the assets are well beyond our physical reach. We need to be able to keep adversaries and environmental threats out, but without inconveniencing the users we trust. We need to be able to extend to digital locations that are well beyond our physical reach. We need to be able to adapt instantly to changes in policy. For example, to revoke a user's privileges if that user leaves the organization, or to dissolve the trust that we might have with a third-party organization when we decide to stop using their services. We need to strike a balance between the convenience for the user and the security of the digital assets. We need to be able to adapt the level of controls and access for a user according to the context they are in the moment. We also need to be able to give the users the benefit of trust, but to be able to detect and to defend against the malicious exploitation of that trust in real time. And that's why we need the secure digital perimeter. In the next clip, I'm going to explain what the elements are of the secure digital perimeter and a little bit about how they work.